Hello and welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be talking about the things that you need to start writing a musical. Okay, now we're just going to jump straight into the first one, which is motivation. Basically, you have to really want to do this in order to do it. It's a lot of work and it's a lot of time. I think it's a lot more time than people expect, especially from initially starting to getting something on stage. It can be a really, really long process. So you really have to believe in the story you're telling. You really have to like the characters that you're going to be spending a lot of time with and be really motivated to complete it. You can't just kind of want to do it or else it's not going to happen. Number one thing that you need is motivation. Okay, now number two, I promise we're going to be getting to the more tangible things in a second, but the second thing is the idea. So I know this is, again, not something that's you can touch or feel, it's just the idea, but it is kind of the next step in the thing that you need to start writing. If you don't have an idea, you've got nothing to write about and it's going to be really, really boring. So when it comes to ideas, there's a few different ways that you can get an idea, and I might make a bit of a longer video about this in the future. But firstly, you can look at adaptations. So adaptations are hugely popular with musicals, which means that you adapt a story that already exists. Now, this can have copyright issues. So you have to be a little bit careful if you are interested in adaptation. For example, an adaptation is SpongeBob the musical, because SpongeBob already exists as a thing and then somebody has adapted it into a musical. So that's the first idea. The second idea is taking inspiration from an event. So it could be an event that's happened in your own life. If that's the case, then obviously you can feel free to use that however you like. It could be an event from history. So again, history is pretty fair game. So taking inspiration from things that already exist, but you aren't necessarily adapting it exactly the same. And you could also go into the public domain here. So public domain, I'm sure you will have heard, there is so much stuff. And the public domain is basically things that are free for you to use in whatever way you like without any sort of copyright issues. And a lot of people do things from public domain literature, and older stories enter the public domain once they reach a certain age. So if you think of things like Sherlock Holmes or David Copperfield or things like that, which are very, very old, they're the things that are in the public domain. You can get more new contemporary things that have just been written by random people who've thrown them in the public domain. That's also true. But you do need to kind of really scour and search through them, because obviously being in the public domain, there's some junk, there's some good stuff. So I'll try and leave a few links down below in the description of some places where you can find some public domain stuff. And then the third avenue really for coming up with an idea is to use a completely original idea. So something that has completely come out of your head with, you know, no direct inspirational basis on any other kind of already existing stories or events, just something completely crazy original. You just go, yeah, and aliens are going to come down and this is going to happen and I'm just going to make up every single part of it. So that's a completely original concept. And no matter what way you want to get your idea, no matter what is kind of inspiring you to write a musical, as long as you have the idea and you are 100% solid on, yep, this is my idea. Okay, so now we're getting more into the tangible things that you can touch and feel. My number one thing when it comes to things is a book. A book that you can write in, a book that you can draw in, a book that you can collect research, because one of the big parts of writing that often people don't realize is research. So once you have your idea, you really need to be researching it to make sure it's not only accurate and believable and things like that, but to make sure that you're creating the best show that you can create. So not only do I research things like if it was a historical show, you know, the history of the period, what they wore, things to make it really accurate, but also researching the kinds of sounds that I want to incorporate in the music. What kind of instruments do I like? What kind of music does this story would go hand in hand with? What is it going to sound like? What kind of characters am I going to include? You know, do some, not even research, but fleshing out, you know, really, so you're able to build upon all of the ideas and keep them in one place. And this is especially important if you're going to be writing over a long period of time, say alongside a full-time job, which obviously a lot of people do because they're not full-time writers. If you're going to be writing over a long period of time, it's really important that you have one place where you can keep all your ideas so that you don't lose them. So when you come back to it, you can go, oh, that's right, I had this great idea about such and such. If you have an idea, write it down, okay? And this doesn't have to be a physical book. Myself, I like to use a visual diary, which doesn't have any lines or anything. I can just do what I want. But if you're super savvy on the computer, you might want to do this on the computer. Whatever floats your boat, but some kind of place where you can collate your ideas and research. Okay, so the next thing is when it comes to the writing part, we want to have some way to record what we write, some way to record the script. So this is a little bit separate from research and ideas. This is when we actually want to start getting stuff down. And this comes into two kind of elements. Firstly, we want a way to record the text, the written word, the script, the dialogue, okay? And there are a few different ways you can do this. Firstly, again, you can be super old school and do it handwritten in some kind of book. I used Word for a really long time, so any kind of Word thing on your computer is really great. You just want to make sure that you back up things so that you don't lose it. And the third, which I've just been getting into recently, is Google Docs or some kind of cloud sharing system. And this has benefits for a few reasons. Firstly, from what I can gather, it's free, whereas Word and an Excel suite and things like that, if you want something kind of good, it can often cost money. So at the moment, Google Docs is free. It also, because it's cloud-based, it automatically saves everything and backs it up, and you can access it on any computer through the internet, which is really, really great. And if you're collaborating, it makes it really, really easy to work with another person. You save it to the Google Docs, the Drive, whatever, that person can then access it, go in and make changes. You can even work on the document at the same time. So there's a fair few benefits there to the Google Docs, but any way that's going to be easiest for you is going to be the best way. Now, the second component of it is recording the music, so the composition. Now, if you're only writing the text, you may not need to worry about this if you're working with somebody else to do the music, but if you're doing the music yourself, you are going to need a way to record the music so that it can be then performed at a later date. If you have it all in your head, it's going to be really, really hard for the pianist or the singers or any of the musicians to know what to play. So it's really important to record it. So there are a few different ways to do this as well. Again, you can be super old school if that's what works best for you. You can use manuscript and a pencil. For me, that's not really going to fly. I'm okay at music, but I'm not that good at music. I'm not Mozart. So what most people do these days is to use a notation software on the computer. So there is a whole bunch of different ones you can get. I personally use Sibelius. I know it's can be kind of clunky, but I've just always used it, so it's really easy for me. And, you know, in a way, that's probably what's best to go with, what you're most comfortable with, what you're most familiar with. If you used a certain program at school, and during school, it might be easiest to use that same one. But if you've never used one before, just do your research. There are a whole bunch of different paid ones, but it's also good to look at free avenues, okay? So if you've never used one before, I would highly recommend starting with a free one. I think I've heard some people say that MuseScore is pretty good. Personally, when I first started, I used Anvil, so you can try and find that. I might leave a link in the description below. And the drawbacks to these free ones are that they have a slightly less sophisticated interface, less features, less things you can do. You can't necessarily make the finished product look as pretty or as presentable or as commercial. But the biggest drawback, just when you're first starting out, is that often it limits the amount of tracks or instrument lines you can have. So just say you want to write for a full 40-piece orchestra, you might struggle in some of these free programs. But if you're just looking for a few instruments, you want to learn how to notate it, listen back to hear what it sounds like, it's a really great way to start recording music, get the hang of it, and then if you find you really like it, you know, invest in something that's more of a paid avenue. Okay, now this next one is super duper helpful. You could say that it's optional, but I personally think it is super handy to have some sort of instrument to help you when you're writing the music. Now, you might be an absolute prodigy and you might not need any kind of instrument. The music might just come and you're able to notate it perfectly, but I know for me it really helps to have a piano. Even though I'm not necessarily a piano player, I think it's kind of like a very great instrument for visualizing the music, you know what I mean? If you're going up, it goes up the piano. If you're going down in pitch, it goes down the piano. Whereas, say, a saxophone, it's much harder to visually see what you're doing, what you're composing, what you're writing. But that being said, again, it's about what you feel most comfortable with. So if you've played saxophone all your life, you might find it really easy to noodle around on the saxophone, come up with some ideas, and then transfer that into notation software. If you're a singer, I'm a singer, so I use a lot of my voice to do improvisations, come up with musical ideas, and I then record that just on my phone. So this is the next thing, again optional, but it's great to have some way of recording audio for your musical ideas. And this does not have to be like a fancy recording setup where you've got the fancy microphone and you're editing. It's just to record ideas, okay? So usually your phone audio recorder will be absolutely fine, and it means that you're able to come back to those ideas again if you're writing over a longer period of time, just to come back and remember, oh yeah, I had that great idea for a song, this is how it goes. So just to recap that, an instrument to help you come up with music, and an audio recorder on your phone, most people will have one, to record the ideas when they come to you. Okay, now the last one that I'm going to talk about is some sort of rhyming dictionary. Can be really, really helpful when writing lyrics, when writing songs and music. Now, you don't have to get a physical rhyming dictionary, although they are available if you want a physical copy. What I use is Rhymezone on the internet, and to be honest, Rhymezone has served me well. I'm sure there are a whole bunch of different ones online. I use Rhymezone. Again, I'll leave a link in the description. And the thing that I like about Rhymezone is that you can select various different things that you want to find. So you can choose to find synonyms, rhymes, near rhymes, X, Y, Z, anything to do with the word that you're searching up. So it's got a lot of different features. And the biggest tip that I'm going to give you is when you go on Rhymezone, instead of just clicking rhymes, what you got to do is click near rhymes, okay? Now this has a few benefits. Not only does it give you rhymes as well as near rhymes, which can really be handy with songs. Not always are we going to have a perfect rhyme. Sometimes we're going to have a near rhyme and it's going to be okay. It's still going to be super effective, okay? And it will actually, what it will do, the biggest helpful thing is that it will list the rhymes vertically, as opposed to just all mishmashy, which it usually does for rhymes. So it goes down in a vertical list. It makes it super, super easy to scan with your eyes down. Rather than trying to pick them out of a big chunk of text, you just scan your eyes down and it usually sorts them from, you know, the most rhymey or the most used, the most popular, you know, not just these random words that you've never heard of, the most, you know, common ones at the top. And then you can scan down to more niche words or less rhymey rhymes. So that is my biggest tip. Click on near rhymes instead of just rhymes. And that just about wraps up my list of things that you need to write a musical. If you have these things, if you have all of these things, you'll be in a really, really good position to start writing, especially if you have the number one thing that I mentioned, which is motivation. Without motivation, you could have all the rest and it honestly would not matter at all because nothing would get done. Okay, so that's all for this video. I hope that you found it useful. Let me know down in the comments below how your own project's going. Hopefully this will help you get started if you haven't started yet, and I'll see you in the next video.